Hi, welcome to a new Plug and Groove video. My name is John Skippy. Ooh, nice one. Skippy Limco. Welcome. Hey, so I don't know why, but one of our favorite plugins and the plugin that I made my very first library for in 2009, FM8. It's available for $10 right now. So it's a crazy, stupid price. If you don't own FM8, it is a FM synthesizer. It is maybe arguably the most powerful because of the fact that there is no algorithm. You can design your own algorithms as you go. It's extremely powerful. Sounds great. These are patches from my first library, and I have a bundle of the two libraries available for the price of one library to celebrate it being $10. So the FM8 Power Pack I released in 2009. And like 3 years later, I released Toxic FM8, which is a library where I was inspired by Skrillex, and I was trying to make patches in the nature where you could go from with your mod wheel. You cannot get this type of frequency change from wavetables and Serum. Well, you sort of can because it does have an FM parameter, but it's very different here because I'm using modulation to remove signal from various operators that are modulating various operators inside of this synthesizer algorithm that I'm currently set for this patch. And what's fun with this is each patch has all sorts of different. Now, these two libraries, there's 80 patches in the Power Pack, and then there's 70 patches in Toxic FM8. I have my own plugin Unify that can load any plugin, layer and stack, and do all sorts of really cool things. So, of course, I have unified this library, both libraries, in fact, so that, let's go over here to Unify for a second. And I have the FM8 Power Pack. And at the end of the list, you'll see that there's these Z patches. These are bonus patches that are layering various, this is 3 different FM8 patches from the Power Pack. And you've got control over the all sorts of really, really cool things. The glamorous piano. And then since Toxic is all about seriously disgusting FM layered and really, really big things, this is more that. I did do one taming myself. Kind of like one of those ethereal pianos you use in some sorts of electronic music. Now, on top of the FM8 library and the Unify library for 2 different libraries, the Toxic FM8 library also came with a video that I'm going to let play when I shut up here in a minute. It's a video tutorial I made 10 years ago. So if you want to see a rather, from how I am today, you know, mustache, longer hair, all that stuff, here I am in 2012. And it's an hour-long video. So I'm going to let the whole hour-long video play. And I go through and I do a walkthrough of all of the parameters of FM8, how it works, to great detail. I really went into it back then.
Making noise and for the speed of the LFOs, right?
explaining the FM, how it works.
Here, that becomes your new attack. And now...
So you'll learn FM synthesis and you'll learn FM8. So if you just bought FM8 for $10, this video will teach you all the details of how to get really cool things happening with FM8. And if you don't own Unify, the patches for FM8 and the video tutorial makes it worth it alone. So go to pluginguru.com, which is actually right here. And I actually have a new banner up right here. Just click on this and get both libraries for $39, and off you go. And right here's a link to the $10 version of FM8. Now, the last thing I want to cover before I shut up is that you need to use the VST3 version of FM8 for these libraries to work. Native Instruments recently updated FM8 to be Apple Silicon compatible, but only for the VST3 and the audio unit version, not the VST2 version. That's still only available in Rosetta. So you go to the plugins, and if you scroll down to FM8, you will see that it is, where's FM8? Right here, VST3. And I have the VST2 version available as well. But if you want, you can go to the operations and select plugin files to scan and load the VST3 version. That way you can also do this, which is kind of cool. If you go to your VST3 folder, if you're on the known plugins page of Unify, and you go to FM8, right here, all I have to do is drag this over Unify, and that's how it can be known, and that way you go to the libraries and they show up in the directories right here for Plugin Guru FM8 Power Pack. So I will put in the links below this video, the links to the walkthrough videos for both of these libraries in case you want to hear the patches. And at this point, we will start the 10-year-old video tutorial I did for FM8. Enjoy. Also, if you buy the bundle, it comes with this video tutorial as a file that you can play on your computer without having to access YouTube. It's a file you can just double-click to open in QuickTime Player or on the PC and play. All right. Thank you for your support. Enjoy this. If you don't have FM8, if you do have FM8, log into the website. There's new versions of the Power Pack and Toxic FM8, which have updated unified libraries. Okay, so there you go. Enjoy. Bye.
Hi there, and welcome to the video tutorial for Toxic FM8. My name is John Lemcool. I created these patches that are in this library, and I'm going to give you a tour of FM8 and show you how to use these patches, as well as how to get around FM8 and how to make patches from scratch. I've been around FM synthesis since it came out in 1982. 1982. And then 1983 was actually when it showed up in the stores, but went to Portland, Oregon from Eastern Oregon, where my mom and dad owned a music store, and went through the introduction of the DX7 by Yamaha, where they trained people on how to use this new form of synthesis. And that started kind of my sound design career, and I've been making patches ever since. So this library, the concept behind Toxic FM8, there's a lot of people talking about using FM8 for dance music. And there's really not a lot of libraries for FM8 because it's not easy to program. I've seen a lot of video tutorials from a lot of people where they say, let's make this really cool raw waveform. So they make this really kind of simple sound that's really bright in FM8. And then they go out to 4 or 5 different effect plugins and they add EQ and they automate everything. And it's just, there had to be another way. And so I spent the last 3 or 4 months researching and working on this library. And here is the end results. And I'm happy to report to you that using just the mod wheel, I can go from a cool sine wave, watch this, real time, you can do that type of stuff. Not only that, it goes even farther, because one of the cool features of FM8 that we'll look at is this thing right here called the morph pad. If you go here, it's an even bigger version of the morph pad instead of the little one. And here, each of these four corners, if you look at the operator configuration, we'll talk about this in a minute, so don't let your eyes get glossy. I'm just giving you a quick little, candy teaser for what we're going to be working on, okay? So we can easily go from one corner for each patch. So if I go to another patch, I'm just moving the mod wheel to do that, right? And then here in the four corners, so it's very easy, real time, to make cool sounds that don't require a whole lot of outside effects. I want to first say to everybody, thank you for buying this and supporting my kind of vision of people getting cool sounds and learning how to use the things they own. That's really where I come from. If you were evaluating this and you didn't pay for this, please do the right thing, I ask you. Because it's just me. You're taking it from me if you haven't bought this. And go to either soundstosample.com or pluginguru.com and buy a legit copy. It's only $30. That's what we're asking for this. So it's not like it's going to break the bank. I want to make it fair for everybody, but I want everybody to pay for it, because I'm going to give you a whole lot of stuff from my gray matter. So it's worth something, I hope, to you. All right? That's all I'm going to say about that. That's the only thing I'm going to say about the whole piracy thing. Just do the right thing. All right, so I'm going to take a break, and then we're going to take a look at using the library.
FM8 is toxic.
All right, the first thing we want to talk about is installing FM8 and installing this library. So first of all, you need to make sure that you're using the latest version of FM8. And as of May 1st, 2012, that version, when you click on the FM8 logo, is 1.2.0. So make sure you're using at least 1.2 or later. These patches won't work if you're using an earlier version that has KSD file support. So put that away. When you first get the libraries, you double click and it will open it up. And when you open up this folder, there's three things. There's the movie you're watching now, there's the README PDF, and then there's patches. And the patches go right over here you go to HD users to your home. You can also quickly click right here where your little home icon is. That's what your home is for your Macintosh-based computer. If it's a Windows-based computer, it might have a similar, I think everybody's working that way now. Then you go to Documents, to Native Instruments, to FM8, to Sounds. And right here, as you can see, is where you put the library. And now when you come over here, FM8, when you click right here, is where you have the FM7, which is the first version of this plugin that came out in, I think, 2001. 2006 is when FM8 came out. So you have the instruments and you have effect presets. And then My FM8 is where my libraries will show up and other libraries for FM8. And there's Toxic FM8. And as you can see, it's by category. It might not look this way when you call up FM8 because they have a whole lot of other things set up. So you can turn off, if you go over here and turn off modified, turn off rating, those things are useless. You can't set up, if you could just click to do a rating, it'd be great. But you actually have to go over to the attributes for a patch, set the rating up here, and then save it to a new location, which is about as useless as you can get. If you want to import sounds, there's a really cool resource on the web. There's more than one. This is Dave Benson's DX7 page. And if you go down here to contents, to patches, and to sysx files right there, you can download, just check this out, a complete mountain 228 banks of patches. They're made for DX7s and TX81Zs and so forth. So they're not going to be, I mean, it's cool if you want like harps and cool basses that are just basic basses. It's a good place to start if you want. If you want to load this in, what you do is you go down here under the file button. Oh wait, we don't want to save as. I clicked the wrong one. File, import sysx. And go to the desktop, to sysx, and whatever you want to choose, say ROM 1A. Yes, import. So it's done it. Now what you have to do is you have to close the folder to my FM8. Anytime something happens in the directories in the Finder, close this and then reopen it. And there it is, converted sysx. Click the little triangle and you get the subdirectories below that because you could have a whole bunch of converted sysx libraries, right? And there you go. Now if you go down here and say pianos. But anyway, that's how you import sysx. And it's useful for getting a whole lot of sounds to play with in FM8. Once I show you some of the things here, you can apply this mangling concept to anything. And so patches that were normal can very quickly become really cool, bizarre. So just follow along and get yourself some patches if you need them. And we'll go from there. Using this library. Let's talk about that real quick. So there's 70 patches, including the one we're going to make together, in this library. And as I mentioned, there's an attributes page where there's comments for a lot of the patches. In fact, most all of the patches have something as a comment. This one here, I said mod. Most of them I don't. So the first thing to do when you call up a patch, especially something like Chainsaw, by itself, it's kind of, you're kidding. That's a patch? But you got to use the mod wheel. It's for those kind of sounds, you know. Use the mod wheel first and foremost to all the patches. When you call up anything, even the wubs. A couple other things to set up. If you want, on the master page, this lists your real-time controllers in CC land, so MIDI controllers, outside hardware controllers that are controlling the plugin. And if you want, I believe, is it 75 and 76, right? So turn these on. If I say 75, and if you double click on the values, you can just type in 76. So there you go. I'm using a Korg micro control, actually the Control 49, and it's got a little vector joystick. If you have any other Korg Oasis, Wave Station, so forth, in software, you can make one in Logic and the environment and set up. Maybe I'll do a YouTube video on that. So check YouTube to see at my channel if I have a video for that, because I think I'll cover that. But anyway, another one that's really useful is controller 1 and 2. A lot of the patches don't have this set up, but on the mod page, controller 1 and 2 can be used to bring in the LFO, to change volumes, to change filters, all sorts of things. So it's good to have access to those and know that they're there. So those are on this page on master. This is where you would set those up. The other thing you have to make sure you set up is voices. Make sure you set it to max voices. A lot of these patches are 4, 5, 8 notes of unison, 10 notes. So if you have it at 8 voices of unison, it can actually turn FM8 into doing some really weird, unexpected things sometimes, and just sounding bad. So make sure you fix that. Another thing you want to fix is under File, go to Options, and make sure you are in high resolution mode. This gives it a higher level of math to work with, so there's less aliasing. The oscillators sound better. So it does make a difference for this type of stuff, especially since we're dealing with extreme distortion, extreme overdrive in FM synthesis land. So before we get to the deeper programming, I want to show you a pit stop at Easy/Morph. This is for people that want to play a sound and modify it, but not have to go into the more complex interface. Easy Morph gives you sliders for both the timbre envelope and the amplitude envelope. And I'll try to explain that in a minute. Then right here is a really important knobs. You have harmonic, and brightness. So just right there, boom. Spin a couple knobs, new sounds. So we just made a cool like bass sound. The way timbre and amplitude work in concept is basically with FM synthesis, you're working with a waveform. That's a basic, boring waveform. And then above it are other waveforms that are beating up those bottom basic waveforms. So the bottom basic waveforms are the ones you hear. And those are the amplitude envelope. So if I turn these and modify these, it affects the whole sound. Timbre and the waveforms at the very bottom that you hear. The timbre by itself just affects the waveforms of the oscillators up here that are changing the ones that you hear. So you can change the tonal character. And then if you like your setting, you like this new sound, you hit apply and boom, all the knobs are automatically put back to 0 and those parameter values are written into the engine. So now all you have to do is go save as clunky, whatever you want to call it. Hit save, there. So Easy/Morph is a great place to go to both change the sound, and also this is where the morph page is. And if we go back to the library here, and we go to Easy Morph, the morph pad and you can bring up these random morph sliders so that it has a larger range to randomize. So as you can see, and by the way, if you have it set right here and then you go save, it will save it with the morph in that location for the sound from now on. So the morph pad gives you the ability, as we'll see in a minute, how to make this. It's really easy. How to have 4 completely different synthesizer patches, so to speak. It doesn't save all the parameters of that patch, but you can easily go between them. And you can interpolate and add randomizing and control how much of a range the randomizing is given between going from one area to another. So you've got literally for every one of these patches in the library, and for every one of the patches in the FM8 library, FM7 library, they didn't do this. You have thousands of patches. Thousands and thousands and thousands. It just goes crazy. So it's a great place to work. Right here's the effect amount, and we'll talk about that when we're making a patch because it allows you to control. This is like the mix between all the effects. If you go to the effect page, you've got the ability to have all this big chain of effects, and right here is the amount. All right. So they have that over there on the morph page. So if the reverb's too much or something, you can turn it down. Here we're using distortion and EQ and stuff. So if you want to turn it off real quick, you can just go to effects and turn it down here. It's the same as doing it right here. All right. So I'm going to take a brief water break and then we will start making patches. All right. Okay, now FM8 is a pretty large ocean to swim around in, but it's actually really basic in its interface and how it works. It's not a lot of pages of different stuff. It's actually multiple pages of almost the same stuff. Sometimes not showing you certain information, whereas if you hit the F button, now you see this oscillator with the envelope and with the modulation settings that you don't see on the overview. Stuff like that. This is your matrix, and this is where all of the, there's actually 8 separate oscillators. 6 of them are waveform based, A through F. X is a noise generator, and it has a saturation circuit that if you were to take F and click and drag here so it does a pit stop, double click there so it's off. Now it's going into X, and then you go down here. You always have to have something connected down here to the output so that you can hear it. And you also need to have something turned on. So I can take, if I hit X, I'm now working. So you can hear the saturator. Drop the noise. And since I'm going into X, it's noise in the sense of adding it to the sound, which is cool. If I double click this so it's off, then it's just X by itself making noise. So it can also be a noise generator. Okay. So double click there to turn it off. Control click is the way that you turn on and off each of these possible oscillator types. And if it's off, then it's not off. If it's off, then you don't hear it. And if it's not connected to the stereo output down here, let's say, think of it that way, you won't hear it. So those 2 rules have to be met for something to be heard. But the way FM works is that stuff that's not connected down below can still affect the sound. And we'll get there in a minute. So we have the sine wave. Let's go over here to the overview of F. Here's what you can do with that sine wave. You have an envelope that you can click and drag. And if I set this to slide, so I can drag to make it longer. If I hold down Control and click, there's 2 places to click. You got to be aware of this. If you click here in the middle, you'll see a little gray line show up right there. That kind of indicates that you just turned on the envelope to be looping. As I bring these in closer, you'll hear it. If you double click on the envelope area, it will zoom to fit. So I've got, it's basically, it's kind of weird how that happens, that it turns it on that way, right? But you can get very fast. Which is cool to have looping envelopes that short and fast for a cool, tricky sound. Okay, so go back to new sound. Double click so it zooms out. So if you control click in this area, it's going to turn it into a loop. So don't do that unless you want it. The important trick here is to click and drag the far left segment. And now you want to control click in here. And you can control click as many segments as you want. Just don't do any in between these 2 red marks. Because if you do, that turns on the loop. So you just bring these down. And this will be the sustain part. So you determine where you want it to sustain at. But now you can have a slow attack, followed by something else. Okay, so you have these envelopes. If you want complex envelopes, you can click right here, and there's a whole bunch of different templates. There's basic ADSR and more complex ADSR and 2 attack, 2 release. So it's got 1 segment for attack here. And then the release has 2 segments now. Below this are decay. These are rhythmic and looping envelopes after this dash mark. So if I say pattern loop, if I go over here and click tempo sync to turn that on, it now follows the sync of my sequencer. Only if the tempo sync is on. So there you go with those. So if we go back to new, so we have the ability to build these complex things that we're going to do in a minute. When we're done here, we have basically an effect page Well, actually, we have master, which has the unison mode. And pan for the unison. You have portamento you can turn on for the patch. Smaller the number, the faster it is. You have a couple other parameters over here that are useful. Analog. This is also found on the pitch page. If you bring up analog here, say to 47, and go back to master, it's 47. This is a random detuning per note. So if you have it set to unison, it's nice to have analog detuning up a little bit so that it's never the same pitch for the unison mode. Sounds better. Digital is a type of an aliasing. Right? Which is cool to add to sounds. And then the effects. And here you can say reverb. You've got basic controls over the brightness. Actually, 2 different brightness controls and then time. Very basic. You can't change the order of the effects. And we'll look at these when we're making a patch in a minute, but I just wanted to point this out. This is where the effects are. And there's a delay. And if you want things to be tempo synced, you have to hit the sync button for the delay. And this is one of my gripes, both here and on the LFO page. When you hit sync, it's still a numeric value for the rate of the delay time and for the speed of the LFOs. So you don't know if it's an 8th note or a 16th note unless you listen to it and figure it out. Also, sync doesn't have triplets for, I don't think it has even for the delays. Definitely not for the LFO. So if you're at 140 beats per minute, you want your LFO to be at like 36 is the magic number. You also, while we're on this page, the LFOs are set up in the new sound by going here in a very uneasy to use and unfun to use way, where the LFO speed, if I turn this up so that we hear, let's turn off our delay and turn off our reverb. We'll come back to the effects in a minute. But if you go over here, right? If I play an octave higher, it's faster. Another octave higher, it's even faster. That's because key scale is on, so turn that off. Velocity scale is also there, which means you can have a sound that plays slow when you play with a soft velocity. When you play hard, go to the faster time. So both of those are on by default, which is just totally useless. So turn those off. In fact, just so you know, if you go to the browser, new patch by going init patch here, it loads up a patch that automatically is routed to the filter correctly, has a better modulation speed, and it has key scale and velocity scale turned off for the LFOs. So when you're working on a new sound, if you decide to do so, and you want to start from scratch, go to the browser and start with the init patch, just because it gets rid of these pitfalls with the LFOs and so forth that would stop you from having fun. It's not fun to have an LFO that you think is synced and playing right, and you play somewhere else and it's not in sync and it doesn't play right. All right, so that's our flow for what we have. We also have an arpeggiator, which is a fairly basic but cool arpeggiator. You turn it on by hitting the ARP button right here. And the note order says what order it's going to play each note. There's an accent you can turn on and off. Over here, there's an accent velocity amount. So you can have so that certain notes are hit really hard and then it plays the soft for the rest of the body. Here's your overall velocity. So you have it really soft, but the accents hit really hard. You can even split it so that, say, it's... So I got the left hand down here is playing the ARP. Right hand, no ARP. Or you could say the other way around and say bass. Which is cool too. So you have those parameters. You have templates to choose from right here. So you can go through all the templates, and there's quite a few. If you save, you've got some spaces here for save. Isn't that nice of them to work with? All right. So that's your flow. Is you have 6 waveform-based oscillators, a noise generator, Z is your filter. Let's do this. If we bring up and set this to be a triangle or a sawtooth, turn off the ARP. Bring up the feedback. If you go over here to the spectrum page, you can actually look at what the waveform is that you're making. And you realize that as you go higher, it totally falls apart. You want to keep it close to the center so you have a full-bodied sawtooth for the most part. Depends on the type of what sound you're going to make, but it's good to start with as full of a body here as you can, and then as we're doing now, we're going to subtract from it, so you want full body to start with. Then go to the filter by hitting Z, and we're now working from my template that I had, the init patch, right? So if you hit Z, here's your cutoff. Here's your envelope intensity amount. Here's the sustain portion. So bring this down. That's just a blip. The curvature is right here. So you can really hear the difference of the curvature right here. Right? Okay, bring this back up. Bring the envelope amount back down. Because I want to show you real quickly the spread second filter, how it works. All right. So the mix right now is set to 1 instead of 2. And here's 1 and here's 2. If I bring it up to the other side, I'm now controlling this guy. The way to really hear it is to set to like 50%. Because now I can go resonance really high. You hear the second. Let's turn this all the way off. Right? And if I change it from serial and parallel, or from, actually it's serial, I want to go to parallel, it gets brighter. Right? Because the second filter is no longer first going through the low pass filter, number 1. And you can use this to get all sorts of cool, have it dark, but have this bright. So it's a really sweet sound. Some cool stuff. So that's the cool things with the filter that you have access to. If you have it just back at 1, it's just a low pass. I should talk about mode real quick. Mode allows the filter 1 or 2 to constantly be switched between a low pass filter to a high pass filter. And if it's in the middle, it's kind of like a band pass. Curvature is not as strong as it should be for a true band pass, so they don't call it a band pass. But it's variable between low pass and high pass. And so you can do some cool things, kill a little bit of low end, do all sorts of different things with this filter if you want. So we're going to put it back up at max. And now let's get crazy. You ready? So FM synthesis. In the simple world, trying to do, nice normal sounds, you'd bring up this operator to say be a higher, and you double click here and you'd control this so that it changes over time. Oh, you know what? It's already complex already because this is a sawtooth. Let's go back to a sine wave for our simple example. There we go. Nice electric pianos, nice bells, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, the concept for what we're going to do is to make really bright, really strong, harmonically intense sounds. And then I found some cool ways of controlling those sounds with the mod wheel. And that's really the big push with this library, is to get these sounds that you make it really huge and then you take away from it. And then you bring that back with the mod wheel. That's the simplest way to describe it. Now, this layout, it allows you to do some really radical things. And as you go through the patches, if you study them, there's a whole bunch of different possible configurations of how to set up these operators. So what we're going to do is, instead of going to there's so many ways to do this, because these guys are just sitting here. You tell it what order and how you want them to be shaped. So let's do this. Let's have E go into F, and let's click right here to listen to F and E real quick. This relationship between two operators is really important, and that alone can be quite enough. So maybe we'll start there and then we'll add more to it, right? Right? So what if we were to take E and make it a lower pitch? So it's lower, let's say 0.5. We can go up here and control click to add another segment. Very bassy, right? And if you were to change this waveform to be really more intense, like a sawtooth, totally changes what's happening. You can see over here the waveform spectrum layout. It's really interesting. Something's repeating. Are you repeating? Oh, you are, because I added a control. See, this is what happens, and this is the thing that's confusing with these envelopes, is I control click just to add a step here because I wanted to have a little bit more faster shift, but it turned it into a looping envelope, and that happens all the time. If you take that back out, it's not doing it anymore. So the rule is you drag to the right, control click here, that becomes your new attack, and now it doesn't loop. Trust me, you will have things looping that you don't want looping. It happens all the time. Just don't click. In fact, you can get these two guys close together. If you put any segments, anything in here, if I go like this, it's actually cool sometimes. I've got a really complex looping thing going on now. And if I click and drag here to spread it out, I could go like this and make it longer, slower. Or I can bring it in tighter, make it really fast. Just be aware, if you click between the two red lines, you're going to be looping. And if you don't want to be looping, then just go back into ADSR. And you're back in business. Now I'm going to keep this up bright. We have these two sounds, and I like that. A lot of this is experimentation, but the basic concept is to find interesting combinations of frequency settings and waveforms and how they interact when you bring the slider up and down, right? That's cool. It's got some cool, interesting stuff in there. So what we do is we go here to the mod page. We go to the modulation wheel and we find E. And we just drag up. And as I drag up, I'm doing one of two things. Either it's this way, or we want to double click here to turn off pitch LFO. If I have it at minus 99, that means that when it's down, it's there. As I bring up, it goes away. If you go to plus 99, what happens is it goes away. A lot of times you'll get to these values, especially with the pitch bend range. You're clicking here and you try to get it to be 24 and it won't do 24. It jumps between them. So hold down shift and now you can do 24. And that's, pitch bend down should be minus 24. So let's go minus 24, maybe up 12. So use the shift key to get values to be right. So I've taken E and its modulation setting right here I dragged up is at 100, so I don't hear it. Right? So when I bring the mod wheel all the way up, it's at full volume. Now let's have D go into E. Now listen to this. Let's find an interesting waveform for D. And I play the mod wheel. Ooh. Hear all that jumping around? So go to mod and let's bring up to say about 90, maybe 95. For D. So now they're both assigned to the mod wheel. So when I play soft, if I take F and I change this waveform, that's cool. But maybe I don't want to hear F either, right? So now I go, I don't want to hear when it's all the way down. I don't want to hear that. So go to F and crank him up. So they're gone until I use the mod wheel. So I've turned on 3 operators. I've got D going into E, E going into F. Okay? And then it's coming down here. This could be enough for what you want, maybe. Turn on C and crank him all the way down here without him going into anything. Maybe E, we want to use the envelope to fade in a little bit, maybe. Same with D. There we go. Now we were talking about key scaling. Here's a case where it's really bright and cool right here. Up the keyboard. So you go over here and turn on and off. Let's turn off D first. Come over here, D. It's really E that we need to control. Go to key scaling, go to E, and F, because F's the total output, right? There's a little key scaling already assigned. All right. So now in this configuration, the way it's set up right now, C is like a sub-os. I could even turn on B, have it be another sub-os, maybe bring it down to like 0.25 so it's even lower. Got 0.25, so go 0.25. So we have, and give them a little detuning. It takes very little detuning. Okay. Now, at this point, we'll come back and look at more complex things we could do to this, but if you wanted to make it even bigger sounding, the most typical place to go at some point is to go to unison. And here's where the random detuning. So I like this shape. There's other things you can do. I don't like that it kind of has an organ sound to it. So we want to change F to have more interesting harmonic stuff going on to it. So let's have these guys affect F. See, without it. Another place to look is to feedback on itself. I like that. I like that. We're going to save that. Let's save that. Save sound as, let's go to Toxic, Bass, Big Toot. Call it Big Toot. It came from the tutorial and it's big. Save along the process as you go, because it's really easy to change one thing and it will completely change everything in the sound. I mean, you could go over here now and say, oh, that's cool, but what if we change this waveform? And all of a sudden, oh no. I lost it. What did I do? Go back, hide, reshow it, go to Toxic, Big Toot. Here we go. Ah, there it is. Now you can have everything connected to everything. And if we wanted to keep really going crazy with this, we could have F. Let's have F go into D and let's listen to what happens. Maybe a little bit. We could have D go into F. Have C go into F. There's no rules as to what works and what doesn't. You can just keep building. It's really that simple. We're not using the filter, so I'll double click that so it's not connected and turn it off. Okay, we're ready for the next step. Let's go to the effects. And let's turn on the overdrive. For these types of things, set the mod all the way up so it's bright. And what the overdrive does is nice is you'll get rid of some of that digital stuff that's up there. Tube cabinet if you really need to kill additional. Don't need it. Guitar cab has all these different guitar amplifiers. Air is kind of this feedback. I don't like that. We'll see. The last trick that's really cool. Let's see. Let's add a little shoving EQ. The really cool part here is to control the amount. Bring it down to like say 40%. Maybe you don't need the guitar cab. The other trick is a Takwa. Turn this on, set it to bright, turn on the mod wheel. I like the size to be small. That's cool to play with, so you have that you can use. Turn up some reverb by turning on the reverb. Turn on some chorus. One effect I want to show you that's really cool to play with is what they call the psyche delay. What it can do that's really cool is it has a pitch shifting. Really awesome on pads and so forth. If you have just a little bit of detune set. Alright. So we got this big sound. We don't need the delay, so we'll turn that off. Now, if we want to wobble this, let's save this. The concept for the library, if you go through it, you'll see that there's a lot of patches that are straight and wobble, like Hydra. Some of them have a... Where is it straight? This fades out, this doesn't. Type of thing. So let's go back to Big Toot. And let's make a wobble version, right? So first thing we want to do is go to mod and turn off the modulation wheel for this. So we want modulation to do something else. And set the Takwa to the frequency we want. Okay. Now, instead of F coming straight down here, let's do it this way. Let's double click here. So all we have are the sub-bosses coming out here. F is going to go over here to Z and then out. And turn Z on. So bring up the resonance a little bit. Go to mod. Let's use LFO2. Come down here to Z. Sync and key sync. And we can now, if you go to the Z page, now that I've set up, I could have done it from here in the first place, but see right here, LFO2. back to mod and control the volume for like F. If I use this on B and C, it's going to, the sustain parts are now going to have wobble assigned. And maybe you don't want that. So if we go to C and B, listen to this. You don't want that. You want those to be steady and... One cool thing with the synced LFOs is you don't get triplets, but you do get super fast. So that's a lot of fun. Save as wobble. So there's Big Toot. And wobble. So if you have two FM8s, one doing the straight stuff and then bringing in the wobble when you want it. One more thing I want to show you before we end this tutorial is the concept of the morph pad. And this is one of my favorite parts of FM8. And this is one of the parts that I think a lot of the guys use pretty heavily for some of the stuff you hear Dub doing. What the concept is that I have this algorithm I've created with this layout, 2 sub-osses, and then these 3 operators are feeding back on each other to create this very complex sound, right? If you go to the morph page and you hit normalize timbres, it will copy this algorithm into all 4 corners. And like I showed you earlier, up here, if you click and drag, you can move this morph pad around like that. Each of these 4 corners can be a completely different configuration of frequencies, offsets, waveforms, not invert or sync or key pitch. Those you can't. But all of the parameters for noise, the filter parameters, whether something goes into the filter or not. So I could take this. Let's bring this up. And let's turn this on. Let's change waveforms. Just drag them. Say 5 and 8. And I want E to the D. So now, if I move my morph pad down here, it's there. Now to go to this corner. Change your output levels. So you can see you can make really cool stuff where each corner is a different variation of the patch. Hard to edit with a trackpad, but I'm doing the best. Output levels, different waveforms on the sub-osses. In fact, they could become chord things. Let's see, double click here, make that 3. Double click here to make that 2. There. So just to show you quickly. And for this one, I want it to be these guys all off. And I want him to go feeding into there. Let's see, have him feed into there. And F doesn't go there, it comes back here. And these guys are panned left and right really hard. Each of the 4 corners can be whatever you want. So that opens up the door for all sorts of stuff to be made. In fact, if you go through the patches, let's go save sound. There's hidden stuff in all these patches. And if you build dub, a lot of people build dub by bouncing out different performances of the sounds and then stacking the audio track. So it's got this type of phrase for this little part of the measure, and then something from another part and the next part of the measure. These 4 variations are really cool to give you all sorts of tons of fodder to play with. So make sure you explore that. And I hope I gave you enough of an idea of where to go with FM8. One thing also, if we went back to Big Toot, each one of these 4 corners can also have different effect mixes. Right? And you might want to level balance it, so move it up a little bit. All right, so then go save. Save sound. So that gives you the run through of the basics of making complex sounds. You just click and drag to create the sound the way you want. If you want to work on the envelopes, you can control the envelopes here. If things get too loud in a certain part of the keyboard, you can make it so that it actually, if you control click, you can actually make it completely disappear in certain areas. There's not a lot of modulation controls. One thing that is kind of cool is to use controller 1 and controller 2 as additional control sources for controlling, say, bringing in LFO 1. I could assign those to be set to control 1, and I can have it set to be really fast or something crazy. So then I just go up to the master and make sure that controller 1 that's controller 4. So I just set up a slider on my keyboard controller to controller 4 and go down, have a good time. Pitch bend again is right here on the mod page, right there, for up and down, and it can go plus 99, minus 99, which is crazy scary. So be careful, don't hurt your ears. All right, and we'll see you pretty soon in the next tutorial. So thanks again for being a good customer, and see you later. Bye.